Yeah, John, as far as an approach, I can speak from my own experience. I was introduced to the helpers from, say, the new media. A lot of people use that term. Essentially, I was watching Sunday Night Live with Father Benedict Groeschel, and he had invited Monsignor Riley on, and he was discussing what the helpers were, what the helpers do around the world. Specifically, I guess he ended at some point explaining what the helpers vigils do here in Brooklyn, Queens, and shortly after that, that's when I first attended my first vigil. And from that point forward, my involvement within, I guess you could say, the pro-life ministry, prayer vigils, witnessing publicly, actively, has grown. So I would say from my own perspective, and I think from the perspective of a lot of young adults that are plugged into the new media, that's a great way to engage them. The best way, I'm not really sure, but I'd say it's probably one of the best ways given their involvement with the new media. So.
Well, I think one way that's very helpful, it was very helpful for me, even before being a seminarian, was going down to the March for Life. Just seeing how necessary the pro-life movement was to the country, not realizing that I had so many other people who were interested in life. And so coming back to the diocese, I realized that I had to do something more active. I know there are a lot of people who go to the March for Life that are involved all year round, but there are a number of people who are involved at the March for Life for the first time. And so getting people on the buses down for a day, having them realize how strong a movement it is, a pro-life movement, and then when they're on the buses coming back home, letting them know that this shouldn't be the last moment until the next year, but rather there is this group that is that has the helpers have such a big mass every month, but also a presence every day of the year outside of clinics, helping women, helping men, helping families. I think tapping into that opportunity right after the march is a good way.
I would say pro-life work, and so to really reflect on my vocation, that would probably take me back to high school where I could see some seeds. Now I can view some of the seeds that were present there that I didn't understand at the time. But specifically, right after college, let's say through college, I was always pro-life, but that was passively pro-life. I would say I was pro-life, but was I doing anything actively? No. After college, I started working, and I had this tug on my heart that I wanted to work in the pro-life field. I really didn't know where that was or what that would involve. I just knew that I wanted to do that. And there again, it was the new media that introduced me to what was going on. I was watching TV, Sunday Night Live with Father Benedict Groeschel. Monsignor Riley was on there, explained who the helpers were. I said, I'm going to go to one of those vigils, see what that's about. And from that point forward, I learned about the Life Center of Long Island. I volunteered at a crisis pregnancy center, was introduced to the Sisters of Life, started to going to vigils in New York City, and it was just amazing the graces that flowed from that activity. So people ask me that question, young adults ask me that question, I would say that there's a lot of things that you can do to discern a vocation. Certainly you want to pay attention to specifically what the Church says regarding that, prayer, the sacramental life, receiving the Eucharist, confession. But personally, what I did in a specific way, what I saw in my own life was just really taking to a specific charity and devoting myself to that. For me, it was the pro-life cause, attending vigils, in many ways becoming uncomfortable. The first couple times I went out on a sidewalk alone, 40 Days for Life, I signed up for an hour. That was a little intimidating, a little nerve-wracking, but you get stretched and you grow. And so I saw my own weaknesses. I learned myself a lot better than I'd ever known myself, I guess you could say, in college, and even the 4 years I was working after college. And so those 4 years before I entered the seminary, I was just gradually becoming more and more involved with the pro-life efforts in Long Island, the boroughs, New York City. And that was a great blessing because that did lead me to my vocation eventually, I think. It led me, of course, to talk to many outstanding people, those involved with the helpers, volunteers for crisis pregnancy centers, priests, religious, the Sisters of Life. And through those interactions, I came to realize that there was something there vocationally, and that's when I took the plunge. That's when I went from cyber discerning to actually talking to a vocations director about the possibility of entering the seminary. Okay, so I think had that the pro-life activity not been there, God can still work, but I think it would have taken a lot longer.
What impressed me about the helpers' approach to the prayer vigil is how comprehensive it is. It's the culmination, it's the high point of what has been a whole month of prayer and watchful vigilance and rosaries and sacrifices offered by so many people around the country, that it's interesting to me to see that the hundreds of people that come out on that one day are not the only hundreds that are interested, but are the only hundreds that could make it out. There's so many more who are staying in the church to adore. There's so many more who are at work praying, saying the morning offering of the helpers, saying the rosary meditations that the helpers have developed. And it's just that visible, tangible expression of what's been going on for the whole month and in every day, which is really beautiful to me. It's not as some other groups might have, I'm not thinking of pro-life groups, but any activist group might have some sort of demonstration, which is really all they do, this one flash in the pan sort of event. For the helpers, the monthly vigil is the high point of what goes on every day, throughout the day, and that's really impressive to me, how comprehensive it is.
Specifically this morning, I've been to plenty of vigils, many helpers vigils, several beginning at St. James, and I'd say specifically you can maybe point to certain vigils that felt grace-filled. You don't know what it was about that morning, but sometime at Mass or during the procession down, you just feel the grace of God is with you. And I felt that this morning. It was a fantastic homily by Bishop Geppetto. So right during Mass, leading up to the procession down, even though the numbers were a little fewer today, that's one thing I think we could recognize. There weren't as many young adults, so the procession wasn't as big, but you just felt the grace of all the, you say, the church triumphant that was with us, okay? And maybe that's the difference, that when the numbers are fewer, at Calvary, the church triumphant steps in. And so, I felt that this morning specifically, in that you really don't feel alone just because you don't have great numbers out at the vigil site at Calvary, as Monsignor Riley refers to it. It was just a grace-filled vigil all the way through.
It's interesting that you should bring it up exactly as that, even though we didn't discuss this. In college, I wasn't really practicing my faith, but I did listen to conservative talk radio. And if anyone asked, I would say that I'm Catholic, but I didn't make it to Mass every Sunday. I would make it to Mass maybe once every 3 weeks. But listening to conservative talk radio, I realized that at the very least, to be Christian, one could not support the killing of a child in the womb. And so I joined the pro-life club at school, and I went down to the March for Life. And while I was at the March for Life, my first real experience of witnessing for life, I met a religious sister, Sister Frances Gabriel, and she challenged me to find out more about my faith, because I said, this is the first time I prayed the rosary today, sister. And she said, really? What kind of a Catholic are you? And I was really blown away by that. And as I met her and encountered her, and together with the entire Witness for Life of everyone that was around, but particularly this one sister, I was drawn to find out more about my faith, not simply this moment of activism, but what is it about my faith that underlies all of this and underlies her own faith? Because she revealed to me that only a few years prior, I think a dozen years prior, she was an atheist. And here she was an elderly sister. So at a late point in her life, she found enough reason to believe in God, to become a Catholic, to become a religious. And I didn't have enough reason to believe in God to get up on Sunday, every Sunday. And God was kind of in the background. So encountering her in this public witness, in her public role as a religious sister, helped me to feel more comfortable and to be spurred to find out the deeper truths of the faith. Once I did that, I kept praying to God. I said, I can't believe there's so much here that I didn't know. The Eucharist, confession, the communion of saints. There's all of this here in the Catholic faith. Why is it that I didn't know, and how can I stop the hemorrhaging, really? Because if I was really interested in Christianity and I didn't know all of these facts about Catholicism itself, what about all of my friends and relatives who really have no interest in Christianity or Catholicism? And so as I kept praying, Lord, how do I help your people? I realized more and more He's calling me to be a priest, to teach people about these truths, to spread these truths that I didn't get as deeply when I was younger, with the hope that many more souls would be saved, many more people would find this truth earlier in their life and have such a greater effect on the world.
Yeah, I'd have to start with my parents. They stood by the church's teachings all the way through, a great formation. They taught me catechesis, and we prayed the family rosary, not every night, but it was very frequent. I do remember that. And so that, in addition to, I would say, very good role models in some of the priests I had in several areas I lived along the way. Just great priests that really revealed that this isn't just a sidebar issue. This is central to our generation, okay? And then it needs to be talked about. The example of Monsignor Riley, I can probably think about a number of priests that mimic that in the homilies they gave, and just their witness, being unafraid to talk about the life issues, the dignity of human life. I look back on my experience of college, and it was a radical lifestyle that I observed, okay? There were secular schools, and just in a passive way realizing this is what the culture of death does to people. Relationships, broken relationships. Many people come out of college broken, and I observed that, and I think I didn't really understand that when I was going through it, but maybe that's what pushed me in the direction of the pro-life movement when I came out of college, just realizing that it's the culture of death that's leading people astray, and this is really your way to engage. And so the example of priests, lay people that understand that, it's not just an issue for them. They understand that this is a way to bring, a light to a culture in darkness, and I've always appreciated that.
I think it is. I think some priests may be afraid of the word theology, in thinking of it in the context of the pulpit. Oh, the laity can't take that, it'll be too much for them. But Jesus taught theology. He just didn't have a Masters of Divinity or a Masters of Arts in theology. He taught theology in a way that people could access it, and we can always do that from the pulpit. We just always have to be conscious of our audience, and that is what Jesus was par excellence. He knew to whom he was speaking when he was speaking, and he didn't give them too much that they couldn't handle unless that was a part of his design, but as he says with some of the parables. But I think if we're always conscious of the level of education, the age of the person we're speaking to, and their proximity to the church, speaking to one woman in the confessional who hasn't gone in 20 years is definitely going to be different from another woman who's a daily communicant. But they each can receive theology, and they each can and have to grow in love of the Lord. I can't say that this woman comes to Mass every day and I mean, she's as close as it's going to get. She can grow even more. I mean, if we believe that we're going to grow in love with the Lord even in heaven, she can definitely grow here on earth. And I can give her a little help in theology, a little boost that'll help her grow. I guess instead of using the word theology, I might just use conversion. We have a daily conversion of heart that has to happen. And a lot of that happens from our moral teaching, from what we learn that is morally acceptable or not acceptable. Some of the basics, a lot of the basics, have to be covered in our day and age. The dignity of life and the sanctity of marriage, the sanctity of the family. But after we've covered that with certain families, we can still progress. We can always progress in teaching people. The best places, of course, are the pulpit and the confessional. Nothing else compares with those two spots of revealing theology to a person. And at the end of the day, theology is in our hearts. The wisdom and the knowledge of God is in our hearts, just dying to be brought out. And our Lord, through the Holy Spirit, will give each priest, each faithful Catholic, the words to draw theology out of the hearts of their listeners, to say a word, to say a sentence that really sparks somebody into thinking, there's something greater that I can do, there's something greater that I can believe now than 10 minutes ago. If we constantly pray to the Holy Spirit, we'll receive those words.
I'd say, from my experience, a lot of people are afraid to go out onto the sidewalk, say for 40 days for life, because they believe that they're going to be confronted by somebody and they're not going to know what to say. Maybe that's why I was nervous one of my first days out, but it's been the entire, my experience has been the entire opposite. People don't approach you. It's almost like an apathy. And so you get to a point where you almost wish people would ask you questions about the faith, about what you believe on the life issues, so that you could witness to that. And so it's almost like you have to play a little offense. You have to go out and engage the culture. It's not just enough. Someone's not going to ask you a question just because you have a bumper sticker or precious feet pin on you. You know, you would hope that would do it, but from my experience, that doesn't do it anymore. I've experienced when you're doing sidewalk counseling and when you're witnessing in a public area, you know, it could be on your way into the grocery store and someone, you know, maybe they do ask you a question about that bumper sticker you have on your car. Okay, it has to be with love and truth, and there has to be sincerity, a genuineness about what you're doing. Okay, I think maybe a lot of people when they first become pro-life, myself, it was, you know, you could apologetically take down the argument, but that's not really the point. You know, I think I've learned that over the years, that you really listen to the underlying, what they're looking for in that question. They're searching for truth, they're searching for love. Okay, there's a reason why they disagree on this point or that, and usually it comes down to a misunderstanding about what it is that the church teaches. And so it's addressing the underlying issue and then bringing it up to the question. And I think that's been my experience. Your sidewalk counsel, there's a young lady approaching you, and it's like Monsignor Riley says, "Good morning, Mom, God bless you. Can I offer you the gift of a rosary?" Okay, and that's approaching someone on a human level. I don't really care where you are politically or what your beliefs are, this and that. Let's connect. Tell me what it is you need right now. You know, why are you thinking about walking into this place? Just talk to me as a human being, you know. It's almost like putting yourself in just a place where you're just going to be genuine with another human being and try to connect on a deeper level. And then they're going to really listen to what it is you have to say about the church's teaching on, you know, chastity. What does purity really mean? You know, the beauty of, you know, sexual relations within marriage, okay? The beauty of family life, okay? All that stuff is going to be very easy to communicate once someone knows you're genuine and that you're telling this to them because you want them to experience joy, okay? Joy, happiness, and ultimately love, okay? Yeah, for all those that might be, watching this interview, I'd just like to say it's been a blessing for me. I'm a seminarian right now. I'm in pre-theology 2. I'm studying for the Diocese of Rockville Center. Okay, and God willing, I'll be going up to the major seminary and continue my discernment. But again, I'd like to bring it back to maybe that specific area, because when I was in college, I'd watch a lot of videos, good programs on, say, EWTN or Catholic channels to try to understand where is it that where do I fit in? Where am I going to go after college? I think at a certain point, young adults are going to all young adults begin to try to find an answer to that question. And so for me, for a young adult that might be watching this video, a young man, enter deeply into charity, in a way where it almost hurts. You're going to stretch yourself, give yourself fully to that. And I would say, don't be afraid if God's pulling you in the direction of pro-life work. I think all youth need to be engaged in that area to some degree. Okay, it might not be a sidewalk counselor. You might not be out there all the time, but that to some degree you have to be able to witness to your friends and your family about really the sacredness of human life. And in doing that, you're going to be stretched, you're going to be put in uncomfortable situations, but you're going to grow and you're going to find vocation. Okay, I think a lot of what I found in going into that area is tied to my ability to finally enter the seminary. And that was almost an easy transition compared to some of the things that preceded that. So it's funny, God has a way of preparing you if you trust and you follow where that's going to lead. So my recommendation to young adults, get involved, watch the videos, go to a pro-life prayer vigil in your area, and volunteer at a crisis pregnancy center. Okay, show up. Even if you call the first time and say, well, we really don't need help, continue to push a little bit, because CPCs across the country, different organizations, 40 Days for Life campaigns, we need people to head this up, and it's our generation right now that needs to be stepping in and doing this. There are gaps all over the place, okay? And so that's there, and it's going to bring you closer to God.